Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lebanon City Council meeting for July 22nd. Our first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Kincaid, will you lead us, please?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we'll move on to the roll call members. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mike Kincaid.
Present.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Morris Jones.
Here.
Dick Robertson.
There.
John Copeland.
Here.
Brent Wheat.
Absent.
And Dan Fleming.
Present.
Okay, that concludes the roll. I believe we don't have minutes for this meeting. We'll have them at our next meeting to approve, so we'll just do a double time next time. So that moves us on to old business. Based on feedback we heard from last time, you guys wanted a presentation concerning the road impact fees. So Kevin, I believe we have our consultants here with us tonight, so if you want to take it over.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be real brief and get the consultants up here. With us tonight is A&F Engineering. They're a transportation and engineering firm based in Indianapolis. We're excited to have them here to talk about traffic impact fees and traffic impact ordinances and the study involved with them. So we're very excited to present this tonight. With that, I will turn it over to them. Here from A&F is Steve Fahrenbach, Matt Brown, and Travis Reich. So with that, I will turn this over to them and let them get into the details of their presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin.
Good evening. My name is Matt Brown. I am a vice president with A&F Engineering. Steve is going to pass along out all the handouts. You're going to see exactly the same thing on the screens. But thank you, sir. We'll check. Thank you. Real quick, A&F has been around since 1966. We've done several traffic impact fee studies throughout the state of Indiana. As far as I know, I think we've done the most in the state. Some community examples are Noblesville, we've done Westfields, we've done Fishers, Zionsville. So this is something that we pride ourselves in doing. And to me, personally, it's probably one of my favorite things to do in our industry. So with that said, I know many of you have seen one version or another of this presentation. I'm not going to repeat a whole lot of that. I'm just going to kind of take a different approach. I've never done this before, but I just kind of sat down and thought every time I give one of these presentations to a community, obviously at the end there's some questions. So I'm going to try to just kind of head off some of those questions and keep it kind of at a 10,000 foot level and just kind of throw out common questions and then kind of answer those questions through the presentation. And then obviously if you have others, then we can add on to the end. So a little bit different technique than I'm used to, but first of all, everybody always wants to know what an impact fee is. Per the Indiana Code, that is the definition, obviously, law speak, so it's not as straightforward as I would put it. But in a sense, it's basically just a monetary impact put on a developer or development to fund infrastructure in this case. It can be parks. I know some communities have park impact fees. I think you guys might be going that way. This is for roadway infrastructure, so intersection design, traffic signal installations, added travel lanes on roadways. So that's what I want to talk about, but in essence, the impact fee is just basically a monetary charge imposed on new development only. So a lot of people are like, well, how do you come up with the fee? And basically the fee, there's kind of two fees. The one fee is the fee that is charged per trip that a new development generates, and then there's the overall fee, and I'll kind of rush on that. But basically a comprehensive study is done. That's what A&F does. And it kind of looks at all of those bullet points, the existing data, 10-year projections, and then it looks at what is it going to take on the roads to accommodate future traffic. Based on those improvements, we then come up with a dollar amount. We know we can do cost estimates of, what a lane is to add and what signals are and all that.
Matt, excuse me, Matt, since we're on TV and there's some people watching on TV, a lot of people may not understand what a trip is, what it means. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go over that. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
So we basically look at the intersection roadway improvements and then do the cost estimates, and then we do a calculation that is based on the improvement cost and then the number of trips that would be generated by new development. And a trip in this case is, if I leave my house and go to work, that's one trip. If I leave work and come back, that's an additional trip. Impact fees are usually based on the 24-hour trips, so how many trips are generated by a particular development over a typical 24-hour period in a weekday. So weekday trips are really what we're talking about here, because that's what has the biggest impact on the roadway system, obviously with work traffic to and from work and to and from retail, things like that. Something of note here that is very important is the study is a comprehensive study, and they're not, they're not small. I sometimes bring them in, but I'm tired of lugging them around because they could be this many. They can be big. So the cost of the study, though, can be paid for by the impact fees, meaning the cost of the study is thrown in to the overall cost when we do the future improvement costs, so that impact fees, as they're collected, can pay for that study, meaning the town is not going to shell out a bunch of money for a study and then not have any return back for it. So they can pay themselves back for the cost of that study, and I think that's really important. How are they enforced? Kind of showed earlier the Indiana Code and law, the 1300 series, kind of spells it all out. And then a local ordinance is passed by the municipality, just kind of outlining, all the rules and regulations of the impact fee and how it can be used and such. What are they used for? This is probably one of the most important things, because I get this question a lot. And it's not maintenance costs, so you can't go fix potholes with it, unfortunately. It's added travel lanes, building a roundabout, putting in a traffic signal, things of that nature. It's basically new infrastructure. You build a new road. If you want to build a new corridor, you can do that. But it's added travel lanes, things of that nature that add capacity to the roadway. That's the key, is anything that will add capacity to the roadway system. Now, in addition to that, once again, the engineering services that are used to establish the fee, i.e. the traffic study, fees can be used to pay for that as well. In addition, any associated engineering services that might come along with the design. So if you say, hey, we're going to put a traffic signal here, and obviously we have to go hire a consultant to design that traffic signal, then the fees that are going to need to be paid for by the installation of that signal and the design of that signal can be paid to that consultant.
Matt, before you go on too, so for example, it's not just the adjacent roadways, right? I mean, it's the overall system?
Correct. So I'm going to dig a little deeper here now, but that's a good question. So basically, when you start a study, you're going to determine an impact area. A zone improvement plan area is basically what you look at, and I think some of you have seen kind of some examples of that. And within that area, that's really our study area. So anything within that study area that's a public roadway can be improved through the impact fee. So say a development comes in at the intersection of First Street and A Street, and First Street is great and A Street is great, and the signal at the intersection is great, and that development really isn't going to have a major impact on those two roads because they've been built, to accommodate future traffic already, and that developer comes in and writes you a check for $100,000, let's say, and you say, okay, that's great, but on the other side of town, 2 miles over, as long as it's within my zone impact or my zone improvement area, there's an intersection out there that's just failing. It's a complete mess. You can take that money and go clear across town and improve that intersection. So as long as it's in the study within the ZIP, the zone improvement plan area, then you can spend it there. So it does not have to be adjacent. That said, if that said developer says, I'm going to build obviously an access drive out onto First Street, and you say, well, you're going to need a turn lane to safely move traffic in and out of your access drive, they're responsible for that because that is an access drive. It doesn't serve the general public. It serves basically them. So they would still be on the hook to go build those turn lanes. Or if, let's say, it was a large use and they warranted a traffic signal, you could have them pay for the traffic signal, and they would still have to do impact fees. So anything that's self-serving is still on them. So back to who pays. This is always important because a lot of times there's some confusion. It is paid for the developers when the building permit is requested. I'm not going to go through how we do it in most communities. Really important, it applies only to new development after the ordinance is passed. And I'll get to a little caveat on that. There is a time frame after the ordinance is passed where it's kind of a free and clear area. You have to wait, but I'll talk about that a little bit. It absolutely does not increase taxes on existing residents or businesses. It really has zero impact on them. So if you're an existing business and you're worried, oh, we're going to have these impact fees, there's no mechanism where you can go back collect on those businesses or those residents. And there's no charge at all to the residents or the businesses. And in fact, like I said, because the study is essentially paid for through the fees, technically they're not even paying taxes to pay for the study because it's going to be reimbursed through the fees. How are they executed? And if you have questions about this is kind of the little deeper, just calculations and things. But basically, when a development comes in, let's say it's 100 homes, they submit their plat and they say, hey, we're gonna pull permits for this, and it's 100 homes. Well, an average home over a typical weekday will generate about 10 trips. So you're gonna have 1,000 trips. You're gonna say, okay, it's gonna be 1,000 trips. And how that would be done is typically, in most communities that we've done these for, is we enter into an agreement to calculate the impact fees on behalf of the city. What that does is it kind of takes the city out of the equation and kind of makes it good because it's a third party and it's not some battle between you and a developer and they're thinking there might be something going on because it's run by the city. It just takes it out of your hands and we do it. It's a little more transparency, I think. A lot of people feel a little bit better about that. So they come in, they submit to you, your planning department. Planning department would forward me a form, say, hey, we have 100 homes coming in. How many trips will that be? And I say, well, that's 1,000 trips. And typically the trips are calculated through what's called the IT trip generation manual, which is an industry standard. It's what every traffic engineer typically uses to estimate trips. And then the trips are going to be multiplied by the fee per trip, and that fee per trip was calculated in a study. So the fee per trip may be $200 per trip. So now you're going to take that $200 and multiply it by the 1,000 trips, and that's going to give you your total impact fee. Typically, there's going to be a form that the planning department comes up with, and we're happy to share other communities' forms, how they've kind of done it. And, so then we'd fill out that form, submit it back to you guys, and then you guys would take it, run back to the developer and say, well, here you go. Before you pull a permit, you're going to have to write me a check for this amount. So it's a pretty streamlined process, honestly. There is the ability for them to appeal an impact fee. We typically, my personal opinion is I don't like to get to that point. If we can sit down and maybe some uses are not so straightforward. Homes, yeah, big retail box, yeah, but sometimes uses have changed through the years, and you're just, I can remember not so long ago, now they're everywhere it seems like, and my kids play baseball, so I'm more aware of it, but, somebody came with like an indoor baseball training center, and there's no data for that, and we kind of had to do some studies on what we could find existing. Of course, they're everywhere now, but so things like that, you kind of have to get creative and maybe do a special engineering study, and that's why we, up in the first bullet point, we talk about a special engineering study if no data is available. Just some typical fees, just to give you kind of a reference here. Those are the kind of four neighboring, Indianapolis suburbs, and you have Noblesville at 240. Fishers is kind of an odd 237.03. Westfield's at 299. That might have gone up recently. They have an escalator in their ordinance that it escalates by a certain percentage, I think, every year. So that might have gone up this year. I didn't check it. And then there's Zionsville. So you can see the three are pretty consistent, but you can see where Zionsville is, and it's basically a function of how much expected land is going to be developed over the next 10 years and how many road improvements, are going to have to be constructed. I can tell you right now, we're doing the town of Sheridan's. Sheridan's roadway system, if you've been up there, they have a lot of 2-lane roads, and they have a lot of 2-way stops and 4-way stops, but they don't have a lot of traffic right now. And they have a land plan, and they're going to generate a fair amount of trips, but there's a lot of capacity left in those roads. So, I would be stunned if their impact fee comes back at $300. That would just be kind of crazy. You wouldn't expect that. And I expect it'll follow Zionsville's model. When the first time we did Zionsville, I think it was 90. And the last time we did it, it stepped up a little bit. And I would expect, typically, I've been at A&F about 20 years, and I'm starting to see the impact. But you're going to start seeing it. It'll go up over a certain amount of years. And then as your land fills up and develops, well, there's not going to be any more land to develop. So it'll hit a peak, and then it'll probably just start trickling down eventually. So, but that's just some typical fees. Just some examples of what those fees really mean when you look at different uses. So I just picked 3 common uses that we see, and if it's $100 impact fee per 24-hour trip, and I just threw out 100. That's obviously at the bottom end. Zionsville's 106, so that would be at the bottom end of that. But that just shows you the impact that you can create monetarily through some developments that are pretty common. 200,000 square foot of retail, you're over $600,000 of impact fee money that you're getting. Medical office is over 550, and then the 100 homes, which I talked about earlier, it's just over 1,040 trips. So it's pretty substantial, especially when you talk about retail. Retail and big general office stuff generates a lot. Industrial, you're going to get a pretty good return. But those are also uses that have a heavy toll on the roadways. So it definitely offsets those impacts, or gives you the opportunity to use the fees to offset those impacts. A few administrative steps that kind of come along with it. Like I said, after the study's done, the ordinance is adopted. And then here's the waiting period I talked about a little bit. They have a 6-month kind of wait period. Once that ordinance is passed, it's basically a fair way of saying, well, okay, now the developers know what's here, so if you want to get your stuff together and start submitting right now, go for it, because you're not going to have to have this impact fee. I think every time I hear that or I say that, I think people vision showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning and having a line of developers out the door, waiting to get in. And I've never seen that. I've never seen this huge flood of developers just hustle up and try to beat that 6 month. I'm sure you're probably going to have 1 or 2 or something that might get going a little more, but it's not like you're going to lose millions of dollars of revenue because of that 6 months. And that's just part of the law anyhow. So, and then the account for the impact fee collection, it has to be a separate account. It can't be commingled with any other accounts. And then basically, per the law, you're required to review the impact fee study and the impact fee study assumptions and methodologies every year. Typically, that does not lead to anything. It's basically saying, if within the study we assumed that 200 acres was going to be developed as parkland, and between the end of the study and the 5-year rewrite, which I'll talk about, somebody decided, you know what, we're going to change our plan, and that parkland is not going to be 200 acres of park. We're going to build a major shopping mall out there that's going to generate 20,000 trips per day. That would be a major change. That would then probably have to go back, plug that in, and rerun it. And what you would end up doing is you would revise your impact fee probably the next year, just go in effect. You'd collect up until the year, then you'd just review the ordinance and change it due to a major land use change. Never, of all the ones we've done, never had to do that. Been close. Somebody's come and say, hey, we think we're going to turn this around to another developer and they're looking to really put high intensity and we're all for it, and then it just kind of goes away. So we've never had to rewrite that, and quite frankly, it has to be a major change. Somebody, 100 homes, and some developer says, you know what, we're going to build 120. That's not going to matter at all. I mean, you're talking about you have to have a major change to really impact the study. The final one is to revise the study every 5 years. By law, you're required to do a total rewrite of the study every 5 years. Depending on who you use, or if you use the person that did the initial study, that can either be a fairly lengthy process, or it can be pretty much streamlined, like Westfield and Noblesville and Fishers, Zionsville. We've done pretty much every one of their rewrites, and have the ability to, we save their traffic model. You have to build a pretty comprehensive computer model for this, and that takes a lot of time. So the ability to get every 5 years to just get back in it and say, okay, we have some updating to do, which takes some time, but we're not building it from scratch. That saves a lot of time and money, honestly. So, but it is required every 5 years to, and you're not required to use the same person, but it helps a lot, honestly. And then I'm just going to go over just some benefits, and then I'll just open up to questions. I know, like I said, I tried to keep it at a pretty high level, but it's pretty technical. If you want to get down in the weeds, we can. But the big benefits is it creates an existing record of traffic counts and the roadway inventory. So through the process and the study, you basically have to count every intersection that you're studying, and you have to count every roadway segment that you're studying. So at the end of it, if nothing else, the engineering department gets a pretty nice database of all the traffic data throughout the city. And then usually these engineers are like me. Any amount of data is great. So creates a roadway improvement plan. So it kind of gives you a roadmap of, okay, here's the expected intersections that we probably are going to fail or come close to failing over the next 10 years. How can we prioritize? How can we take that list and maybe make a prioritized list, maybe 8-10 projects a year, and we're just going to use the impact fee results and kind of hit those. So it kind of gives you a way to rank intersections or segments that you want to fix. Obviously, it provides a new funding source for transportation infrastructure. We've seen it in the last 5 years. It seems like every community obviously is looking for another revenue source to fund transportation, and this surely creates that opportunity. On the development side, it actually creates a level playing field for the developers, and while I won't say that development loves impact fees, I certainly would say that we've had pretty positive results with the development community, in that a good example is, let's say 3 corners of an intersection are developed already, or let's say 2, let's start with 2, and the intersection is working adequately, but not great. And the third guy comes in and it fails, but you think, okay, we can live with it a little longer. And the fourth guy comes in, and say he's smaller than all the other 3, and now just a little bit of traffic he adds just throws the intersection into total chaos. You say to him, hey, you know what? We need you to go build 3 turn lanes and put a traffic signal in. Well, he might be responsible for 5% of the traffic at that intersection, and you just ask him to improve it all for the other developers that were there first. And so this mechanism creates a level playing field. They all know that, or they should know, that when they walk in here, they should expect, $200 per trip or whatever it is. And they should be able to budget that. It's a known. It's a known. Everybody likes to have a known quantity, especially when you're dealing with money. So we found that while, like I said, I don't think they love them. I think they'd rather not pay anything, but that's not the real world. So it gives them known certainty. And finally, and probably the most importantly, and I just want to hit on it again, it does not place any monetary burden on the existing residents or the businesses, so through taxes or collection or any method that way. So with that said, I know there's a lot there, and I know I kind of breezed through it really quick, but I know I didn't want to repeat a lot of the things that you've seen. But if you have some questions, Steve and I will be happy. Steve's done it longer than I have, so he should know more, but so I'll defer to him if I don't. But.
Go, Nick. Yep.
Matt, got a question. You talked about fees have to, collection of fees go into a separate account. And just for an accounting question, earlier you spoke about the study area being in a certain area. Do the funds collected in that area have to stay in that area?
Yes.
So any fees,
Yeah,
so what I'm picturing from our clerk's point of view, will we have several of these accounts, or will it be one account, but we just have to keep track of what fixed area it's in?
So to
Brown.
answer, I'll answer it two ways. The proposal that we have given to you includes a single area. That would be my recommendation for Lebanon. Other communities have multiple areas, and yes, they do have to have separate accounts for each area, and yes, the money has to stay within the area if it's
Okay,
collected within the area.
but you're proposing
We're proposing one area.
just a one area?
For this.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
My recommendation to almost any community is one area if you can do it. There's kind of an old school of thought that, and I think it's gone away for the most part, is, hey, if we make different areas, we'll have different fees per area, and it might encourage development where we want it to go. Well, we all know that if something's a good developable area, $40 more of an impact fee is not going to sway somebody typically if they know they can get 2,000 more patrons a day, So the only one right now I think we're doing is Zionsville, and it has two. And if you're familiar with Zionsville, it's kind of crazy how they kind of jump over
Right out,
Whitestown,
yeah.
and so Whitestown separates it. So that's really, I think, right now the only one. And Noblesville's had multiple before as well.
Well, good, that'll make our clerk happy.
It's much easier, yeah.
And our
and it
and
gives
our
you the ability
engineer
to
happy,
spend
he
it.
won't have to keep track of the separation and so forth.
Right,
So,
and it doesn't hinder you on where you can spend it. You can go across the whole area, so.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
How large is the zone in Lebanon?
Excuse me?
How large is the zone in Lebanon?
What's that?
Is it the entire city?
Yeah, it's 107 intersections.
So is it most of the city?
I believe we're doing all of Center Township, Kevin?
Yeah, it's,
What I thought.
It doesn't go, they can speak to
Yeah.
it, it doesn't go all the way to the limits of
map
Center
in the back of
Township. We looked at an area, getting near Center Township in some areas, but more sort of envisioning where the city would be projected to grow in the next 5 years.
here, I'm gonna have Steve, he's gonna pass out a map.
And you actually can put that on the overhead there?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's the red area. Oh, that's not the best because it's glossy, but it's the red area, if you can see it, and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, it's not, yeah, I'll try to.
What's the red area?
High gloss paper isn't there. I think you can see it. I'll point it out on here just to try to get, yeah. But it's basically this area. Left-handed, not great. This area here. That area there. So it's a substantial area. What'd you say, how many intersections was it total? 100 and some? 70? 170, yeah, that makes more sense.
The blue line on the map is your existing city boundary, the yellow line on the map is your existing Center Township boundary.
And something to note about that, we always get a question of, well, how do you determine this? It's a fine balance because you don't want to go too far out because it just drives the study costs, quite honestly, up. And it's not going to provide you much more data, and it's not going to give you much more impact fee. So you try to make a good guess of, okay, where is development going to occur over the next 5 to 10 years? And let's try to capture that area. And if we go too far out, those intersections aren't really going to be impacted much anyhow, and we're not going to be collecting any impact fees to fix those intersections. So, so it's a fine line.
Okay.
Is this-
Yeah, well, this covers a lot.
Yeah, it does. It covers a lot. It's going to take a pretty good crew to collect all that data, let me tell you. We counting a lot of traffic.
Are you doing it now?
No, not yet.
We haven't appropriated the funds or entered into a contract with them yet, so
So these lines are open for, you can open them up again if you want to, or bring them back down for certain areas.
Every 5 years when we do the study.
I meant this one right here.
Yeah, this is not set in stone.
Yeah, oh yeah,
I want to know.
that is not set in stone
Thank
right
you.
now, but yeah, but I do want to hit on that. Every 5 years, you're not held to that. You know, you can adjust it if you say, okay, well, that area filled up, let's widen the zone, then we just go widen the zone, so.
Come. Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public? Go ahead, Cindy, come on up.
So,
I don't know how building permits for residential.
Hey Cindy, I'm sorry, can you come up to the microphone? I know it's a long walk, but there's people watching at home, so. They got to see your shirt too. It looks great, so.
Cindy Zimmerman, Viceroy Lane, and I love my shirt. I don't know how building permits for commercial development goes, as far as residential development goes as too. If you've got a housing addition and it's built in phases, do they get one building permit? So if we've got our homes
Yep.
that are going to be developed in the next year or so in a phase one, can
So
we
you
get
get-
them on this on a different phase?
So you get a building permit for every individual building you build. So if,
When you
so,
first get the, okay,
correct. So if there's a phase of neighborhood that hasn't been built yet, they still have to come and get their building permits before they build that next phase.
okay, but when they buy a section of land, do they get that all at once, that
No.
building?
No, so
Okay.
if you build 100 homes, you have 100 building permits for the homes. You don't have one building permit.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions from the public?
You want to ask it or you want me to ask it?
Good, for discussion?
That doesn't include Yulin, correct? We wouldn't count traffic in Yulin.
That is correct. It's not our city. Just- That's an incorporated portion of the city, of another town, so that's different. Yeah.
in case Rob wants to go through annexation.
I already told you what the rule is there, so. Any other questions for Matt?
So Matt, does it look like it'd take you, what, a full year to complete the whole
They're
thing?
typically 6 months to 12 months, yeah.
6 to 12 months
Just
to complete the
yeah.
whole
I mean, it
thing?
depends on, this is probably going to be more on the 6, somewhere around there probably, but it's kind of hard to tell, to always give a perfect, because if you end up having to do a bunch of improvements to the roadway system, then it increases the time frame a little bit because it's extra analysis and it's extra cost estimates and things like that. But based on this, I think Zionsville's last one was 8 months, I think, and that's kind of what I'd like to shoot for a little bit quicker than that. It's the data collection is what kills you because you want to do it during school, honestly.
So ideally, we'd like to get started as soon as we
So,
can. with
yeah, I mean,
school.
well, it's a lot of times, Sheridan was a great example. I literally was busting to get the last week of school. And we had guys everywhere because I thought if we don't get all the counts, we literally won't be able to do a whole lot. We can do some, but through the summer. So we ended up the last week getting it all done, and that helped us tremendously because now we've spent all summer really doing all the calculations and things and helped us. But if you get started too late and you can't get the intersections done, then you got to kind of wait all that school year, which is unfortunate. But anymore, that's real important to people is counting during school because schools generate a fair amount of traffic.
Well, we're in the process of working next year's budget, so probably what we've been discussing is maybe we might do now, a certain amount now, and then budget the rest of it for next year.
Sure, it's not
Yeah.
uncommon to, for some communities to say, hey, we'll do the counts, go do data collection, and then the analysis is kind of the second part. So we're working with Zionsville right now for that. We did their data collection. Unfortunately, we did not get it done before school, but I don't think that was the anticipation by them anyhow. We got a lot done, but so we'll go back and finish that up, and then in the meantime, we'll probably work with them to try to get the study going too. So.
Okay, any other questions from council?
No, sir.
Okay, appreciate
Very
your
good. I
time.
appreciate your time. Thank you
All right,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Okay. That concludes what I have for old business. Is there anything from council from old business?
No, sir.
Okay, move on to new business then. I have 11 utilities update from Ed.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks for joining us, Ed.
I had just a few slides and, I'll be brief. Matt's got me set up here. I only got about 4 or 5 slides.
Let me talk that.
Well, thanks for having me. I got about 5 slides. I'll be very brief. I just want to kind of give you an update, make sure I'm communicating with the city council, the good things we're doing at Lebanon Utilities. See if you have any questions for me. And I guess, you have an issue here? I guess I should have slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
I don't know, I've been there and
We
never
tested it earlier
turned
today.
into an IT guy. Yeah.
But more or less, while Matt's working, I'll say I just got 3 topics, really. I was going to mention that you guys are doing a great job on this city revitalization project downtown. We're revitalizing our website. We haven't really updated it in a while. We looked at a couple different specialists on that, and we ended up picking the same company you guys use for the city. And we had some videos they did for us I was going to show that's going to be on our website and eventually. Right now it's kind of embedded in our YouTube video of our conference meetings, but it should really help with stakeholder engagement. And we consider our stakeholders to be city council, our service board, but also our customers and anybody at large that interacts with us, developers that may come in. And also I want to mention that we're trying to help support the community with the Parks Department. We're trying to work on this land swap that the Parks Board approved, where we're trying to swap a little piece of land where we had to get an easement for a house we bought and putting that in with, swapping that with a piece of land that we might need for infrastructure someday, for water, maybe for a water tank or other infrastructure that happens to be at Abner Longley Park. And that, we're just working through the legal details, how that would work. And also the 69 kV project has been challenging for us, but I want to let you know we are engaging the public. We do, we are working through some final details. We had some challenges, but should be done in about a month. And no. Well, this worked this afternoon. Yeah. Well, I don't want to delay I could come back with a presentation if this isn't going to work, but that said, I guess first off, the website, I have some cool stuff to show you. I'll come back at a future meeting, and I'm sorry it didn't work. But as far as the land swap, is there any, are you guys aware what we're trying to work on there for the land swap, and is there any questions on that?
Well, yeah, what exactly is it?
Okay, well, I have a map embedded on there, but there's a house on 501 East Noble Street, I believe is the address, which we had to purchase for an easement, but it makes a great access for Abner Longley Park. And as you all know, getting into Abner Longley Park, and as I know as a new resident, it's difficult to find that entrance. It's the way it's surrounded by houses, and would really help with access and making it involved with the community. But at the same time, there's a piece of land that would be useful for us for either water storage or a booster pump station, or just serving the community better on the other end of Abner Longley Park. And if we could just get the 2 or so acres deeded to us, where the plant or water tank or whatever the infrastructure would be would work, and we just kind of swap the land, and we give the Parks Department the house, they'd have an access to the park. We'd have something for future infrastructure planning, and it just seems like a win-win. So that's kind of what we're after. But as far as the devil's in the details with these things, though, it sounds easy, but the actual pieces of paper that Mr. Shine and Mr. Jacob need to work to make that happen. It can be a little bit challenging, and they're working through that. But since we're working on it, I thought I'd just let the council know that we're working on it. So, also, one of the things I mentioned to the Parks Department is they're interested in having a nature center. And as a utility, our ratepayers aren't going to, can't completely fund a nature center, but we can partner with them and set aside, a spot where a trail might go through and somehow work together on that, because we're all about helping the community. So, but
What about the electrical line project?
Yeah, the 69 kV electric line. Yes, sir. We've had some challenges. It's about a month out till completion, but we're moving along and we're working with the contractor. I know you had somebody at the last city council meeting, Mr. Atkins, I believe, and we've engaged him and we're working with him. I don't have a final resolution or update for you, but I can tell you that we are going to restore all the yards when the work's done. Some of the yards aren't restored yet because we're still going in and out putting lines in and stuff, so we don't want to restore it twice. We want to restore it when it's finished. But I just want to let you know that we're working on it. So.
Thank you.
I have been contacted too by the bowling alley owner. Have you had discussions with him at all concerning his parking lot at all?
Yes, we've been in discussions with him. There's not a final resolution, but we've had regular discussions, and we're engaged.
So make sure that's on your radar, that's all. So,
Okay.
okay.
One other thing is, last council meeting, somebody came up and spoke about some concrete
That's what he was.
failure.
That's what he was mentioning, I think, with
okay.
with Mr. Atkins.
I believe that was Mr. Atkins. He was talking about, I don't think that was the bowling alley, but we have since, as far as the concrete failure, talked to the engineer who talked to a civil engineer and did an inspection on it, and we're expecting paperwork documenting that it was done properly. So, but I don't have that in my hand physically yet. I'm told that they've done that, so.
Showing us pictures and it looked like something wrong with it. I don't know.
Yeah, we're following up on it.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions for Ed? Sorry, the IT kind of let you down here a little bit, but
It happens. Thanks.
we can always find time to we know where to find you. You can always come back. So we're
All
here.
right, appreciate that. Thanks.
I will say real quick though too, so I did take that constituent, as a large state, I was like, all right, let me run with this, and I've got it to the right places, and the utilities are doing a good job as far as running through that process and making sure the constituent gets the right places.
Okay.
So I did take that by the horns, and let's get them taken care of. So just want you guys to know that.
Okay. Any other questions for Ed? Okay. Appreciate your time, sir. Okay. That concludes what I have for new business. I think, Dick, you mentioned something maybe you wanted to talk about.
I think Kevin is going to talk to us about the parks
Yeah.
projects, park project.
Point of order.
So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about tonight was park projects, not all park projects, but the 3 projects that we recently bid. We bid a package of park projects really underneath the guise of the Lebanon Park Restroom Building Facility Project. And with that, though, there were several alternates that we put into that bid package, some for pricing and options associated with the restroom building, but also additional projects that are in the vicinity of the restroom building. Particularly, there were 2 projects that we want to talk about, 3 total. So one is the park restroom building. This is a new restroom building to replace the aging restroom building adjacent to the baseball field in Memorial Park. And we got a base bid for the removal and reconstruction of a larger restroom facility with some built-in storage areas. This is a modernized facility that would be able to be open year-round. And that base bid for this new restroom facility was $327,178. That was the base bid from Monroe Construction Group, and that was the lowest, most responsive and responsible bid. Now, the 2 other projects that we bid with that were what we called bid alternate number 1, which was a maintenance building addition. So building on, expanding, combining a couple of standalone maintenance buildings into one master maintenance building. That was bid alternate number one, and Monroe's bid for that alternate was $191,631. The third project that was in that package that we'd like to talk about is the paving of the maintenance area lot. This is sort of the back of house area for the Parks Department, for John and his crew, where they store their equipment, where they work on equipment, where they stage materials and things like that for their projects. And so this is currently a gravel parking lot, which, by the way, is out of compliance. We don't allow gravel parking lots in the city anymore. But this parking lot, to pave that, to create an asphalt parking area, the low bid on that, also by Monroe Construction, was $96,830. So we've got these three projects. All three projects have received approval from Board of Works, and they have forwarded that to the City Council with a favorable recommendation to award that contingent upon your approval and, more importantly, your approval of financing for these projects. So if we kind of looked at it two different ways, if we are just building the park restroom building, again, the base bid was $327,000. By time we put in some contingencies for miscellaneous issues that might come up of 10%, and then by the time we add in some construction inspection and oversight that we would like to consult with, bring in a private consultant for, the cost of that project basically climbs to a number that we would say is not to exceed $400,000. If we were to then do the two alternate projects, the maintenance building addition and the park maintenance area paving, this total would climb again with contingency included, and also some drainage improvements that would be performed by our in-house crews. The total would be not to exceed $750,000. So really the question for council tonight is, are you in favor of these three projects? And if you are, how would you want to go about appropriating funds to enter into contracts and move forward with these projects? So, does that cover it, Dick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments I could help you address?
The only comment I'd make is that it was ironic that I was doing paperwork before I come up here this afternoon, and I was pulling papers off my desk and looking at them because I was looking for something that was related to what we were going to be talking about tonight. I come across the 2009, is John still there? 2009 park project, and I got to look at these three projects were on that schedule in 2009. And we've been wanting to do these three things for several years now. And honestly, I think it's time that we do that. And I think we need to try to figure out how the options available for us to fund this. We've discussed, Keith and I discussed, and I've discussed with some of you other options, maybe funding part of it out of food and beverage, and maybe part of it out of rainy day is an option as well, or maybe we could do it all out of food and beverage. I don't care, but I think this is something that needs to be done. We need to get this restroom especially out of the way. We need to get them out of the mud for the winter, because when it comes wintertime, they're always running through the mud back there in the back, and plus they need more storage area for equipment to get some of their stuff in out of the weather as well. So I would really like to see us do this, and probably, if you guys want to split this, I would probably recommend we do, let's say, 400 out of additional. It'd be an additional appropriation that we would have to ask for. But I'd like to see us ask for maybe, say, 400,000 out of food and beverage and 350 out of rainy day, and that would give us enough not to exceed?
There's actually some other financials, potentials we've talked about with Tanya. We got a special distribution as well that may be a potential funding source for this. I will say, I think the restroom has to be number one priority on this project. I mean, that's well past its useful life. We have significant issues with it. I mean, it was bad enough that we brought in, portable restrooms for the baseball season because we had lots of visitors coming in, especially people looking at, we had a highly valued recruit possibly for our high school, and frankly, John and I were not pleased with the way that the restrooms reflected on this community. And so I think replacing the restroom needs to be a top priority. I'm more than willing to have future discussions about the park area, or the maintenance area, the maintenance addition, to have those discussions. I think it's something we need to look long and hard at. We can also evaluate, maybe we think about doing the restrooms this year, and then maybe we look at going through a bid process just for the upgrades next year. Again, I'm open to all those discussions, but I really think we need to prioritize the restrooms, because they're bad. They're bad, and they really need to be done. Again, I know that's a big price tag with it too. So like I said, we're open to all discussions with council on it, and we can talk more about options and how we fund it. But
Kevin, how long does the bid last?
We have 60 days from the opening of the bids, and they were opened on June 24th. The bids would become potentially invalid after 60 days.
After August 24th.
How much was that special distribution we got, Remember?
260, I think. I've slept since then, so. But I believe it's more. It's about $250,000.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see what other council members think. I mean,
So we have the money to pay for it in full, coming out of 3 possible sources. Is that what I'm hearing?
We have the money flat out to build it all if we wanted to. It's just a matter of how much do we want to spend this year, and how we phase it.
Well, I'm open for definitely getting the bathroom done.
Yep.
And the maintenance barn and the parking lot also, if we can get it done this year. But definitely the bathroom.
Kevin, our schedule had it, or the bid, right, do we have a completion date? Do we think it would be done this year, or was it over the next year?
We did a pre-award meeting with Monroe Construction. To simply answer your question, the bid documents don't require them to be complete until next summer, by July 1st of next year. But we had an initial pre-award meeting with Monroe Construction, and they committed to us that the schedule that they would like to build on would have the restroom building complete before winter time. They would like to start immediately, and they feel it's less than 4 months of construction. Now, will the maintenance building addition and the parking lot, I'm not for sure if they can do that in the same time frame. It seems feasible to me, but we did not get into those details with the contractor at that time. But certainly by next July 1, all 3 projects could be complete.
Now, as far as funding goes, gentlemen, I don't want to pull anything out of the rainy day fund. We don't know what's going to happen this next year, so I'd rather keep that in reserve in case something happens. And I don't find the restroom to be a rainy day fund scenario for us. So I agree the restroom should be a priority. The maintenance building, I'd like to maybe take another look at. I don't know how high priority this is at that point on that, but the restroom, I think we could use some funds, maybe out of food and beverage, or maybe another fund, but I just do not want to pull it out of rainy day fund at all. Those are my thoughts.
But the rainy day fund is well-funded.
But this
Am I correct?
yes, but,
Is
yes.
it almost overfunded?
Well, I don't.
I mean, when I say overfunded, I mean we're well over the amount required for us to have.
There's
In
nothing that requires us
We
anything.
we have a significant cash reserve at the moment.
Yeah.
Well over what,
Yeah.
the
We have
unball,
enough in the rainy day fund
to stay within our own limits that we've set on our own.
Well, and even in the general fund as well,
That's
too.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying, we've
yes.
got that
Yeah.
all the way, so it's not a question of money,
Yeah.
it's just a question of when and how we want to do it.
I think it's a question of timing and what
Well,
funds.
that too, but I'm just saying is I don't want to have to rebid those other two projects. I want to make sure we've come this far, we've been 10 years getting here, seriously.
I've been sitting up here for 13
Yeah.
years, and
So
we've
I'm
been having
saying
these
to you,
conversations.
I know I'm like a broken record here.
So
So we need to
I'm
do
saying
something
that
about it now.
if we have the money in those three funds, that we do all of it now.
John Morris, thoughts?
I like the idea of doing all three because it's been a long time. I don't know how the parking lot and the building coincide. I mean, does one have to be done before the other? I'm not really sure how that works timeline, but I'd like to see all go forward.
I mean, they're all immediately adjacent to each other. They all touch each other. It's all one integral space that the Parks
Yep.
Department uses. So I'm not saying they couldn't be done individually as three separate projects, but I think there is some efficiencies of doing it all at once. And I would agree, this is long overdue.
Yep.
The efficiencies come in when the contractor knows what's coming up, and he can plan and prepare.
Right.
And keep a crew there, just roll it in one project to the
Absolutely.
next.
And keep in mind, I mean, if we told them, well, we're going to go on the restroom and we'll let you know in a couple of months, one, the bids would expire and they would have no obligation to honor their bid price. And two, if they start losing efficiencies with how they were going to work crews on the site to mesh these projects together, as I said, there's no guarantee they have to honor their price, and the price could become significantly higher if some of those efficiencies are lost. Not to scare you, just that's the reality of the construction industry.
Right, we get behind another project.
Right.
If we don't move on now, we get behind another project that they get. So,
What we need to do is authorize the clerk treasurer to advertise X amount of dollars we decide here this evening out of what fund, so we could move forward with this project. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, so our additional appropriations require a 10-day notice. So our go date is August 2nd, but really, we try to give, 3 days to the paper? Because we have to publish it 3 days to the paper?
Typically.
Yeah, so really, we're talking it here into July, really, for the notice. So
what do we need to do tonight?
We need to decide
in-
how much and where we're going to take it from.
Yeah, essentially give me direction to tell Tanya what do we notice of? Is it out of the, can we all agree that we think the special distribution makes sense?
If it's, let's just say if it's 250 or more.
Yeah, it is.
Let's take 250 out of the special distribution,
Okay,
so we know that's amount, okay? And I'll make a motion that
We need 500 now.
we don't need a motion right now, I just need direction. So, because the action will take place when we vote on the
I'm
appropriation.
not authorizing to prove that. I'm making a motion that we authorize the clerk treasurer to advertise a 500,000 additional appropriation out of.
I don't think you even need to do a vote on that. Like I said, if you give me feedback.
I want the board to agree.
Well, I
That's
agree
what
with
we're
that.
doing.
And that's fine, but
Okay.
we don't need a formal motion with it.
Gotcha.
So, but we can do, so special 250. Essentially, we got to get to 750 ballpark.
Right.
So,
Does everybody agree on 500,000 for food and beverage?
or general fund is the other option?
I would just as soon take it out of general.
Just out of general?
Because we've got way more latitude in that one than we do in.
Or we could do 250 out of food and beverage and 250 out of general too. I mean, again, we can skin this cat a couple ways, so.
Just take the 500, I think, out of the general fund and 250 out of the special distribution.
I'm okay with that.
I'm good with that.
Good with that?
I'm good with that if everybody else is good with that.
I'm good with that.
Okay. I'll tell Tanya.
While we're in the appropriating mood,
Now, wait a minute.
Well, you heard a presentation from A&F a little bit ago, and that was not on the agenda to make an appropriation tonight for the same reason it requires a 10-day notice. But given the fact that school starts on August 12th, and we would like to hit the ground running if it is the council's decision that they want to move forward with the traffic impact fee, we would like to be able to hit the ground running and have as much time to collect that data when the data is valid. So as soon as school starts, we can start making those collections, and then we can collect data with the exception of fall break all the way up into mid-November, and that should give us enough time to collect all the data. But we need to talk about, how we are going to appropriate that. The total contract that they put before you, it gets near 300,000.
$294,500.
Thank you, yes, 294,500. 104,000 is is the data collection phase.
Data collection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the 190,500 is the analysis and preparation of all of the reports and ordinances that would go along with it. So, again, for you guys to consider whether you want to appropriate 104,000 to get them started on data collection and do the 190 as a budget line item or an additional appropriation. But I really would like you to consider that. And again, whatever your decision is, we'll live with. But it is highly the recommendation of staff that we move forward with that, given the fact this is an 8 to 12 month time period and then a 6-month waiting period before we can start collecting fees. To put it in perspective, the fees that would be generated by Gateway Marketplace alone would have easily paid for that study probably twice over. So we've got a time clock here that's sort of ticking, and we want to get out in front of development as best we can. So, but with that, I leave that up to you and in your capable hands.
I don't have any trouble doing that, but I think if again, we go back to that, where that money comes back to, the easiest way to deal with the clerk, as I understand it and see it, is we take it out of the general fund, again, the extras, because it goes straight back in there. If we take it out of another one, it still goes in the general fund. So no matter where we take it from, it's going to go back to the general fund. Is that not correct?
Well, it'll be a separate fund, but I believe what we can do once we have collecting the fees, we can have it would go to the general fund, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
That's correct, yes.
So even if you took it out of another fund,
it would repay it.
still go to the general fund.
Correct, it'd repay it.
That's my point.
Yeah. I think that would be, my recommendation would be that you consider general fund, because normally I know we are all maybe a little adverse to the risk involved with spending our general fund surpluses, but this is this is an opportunity where the first fees that we collect can put that money back.
Yeah, but at some point in time, every penny of that will get put back in the general fund. That's my point.
Right.
It may take a few years, but it's all going to come back in.
It'll all come back. Yep.
Okay?
So what was for the first phase for the traffic count?
$104,000.
$104,000.
And the thought is, we could ask for additional appropriation for that amount, and being we're doing budgets now, we could budget the rest of it while we're doing
Correct.
for next year in the budget.
Does that change anyone's thinking on the park at all?
Not me.
No, not me.
No.
Okay, all right. So we'll ask, so total will be a 605 from general and then 250 from the special distribution.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
we have our marching orders.
Thank you.
I'll talk with Tanya and we'll get that noticed and get that going to
Thank you all.
March on.
Anything else?
further discussion.
Are we going to try to do a special meeting at the end of the month to try to get it done, or?
No, we're fine on August 12th.
Okay.
We'll be fine on August 12th, so. Any public comment concerning that discussion? You good? Yep, please, Cindy. Just gotta show off the shirt again.
Yeah. I just have a concern about the road impact fee. I'm all for it, but I know at the last meeting it was discussed that a residential home built, like if I wanted to build a home, I might be charged that fee as well. I would hate to see the council approve a single-family, one-lot home having to pay an impact fee. Otherwise, go for it.
That's something I think it can be considered in the ordinance as we write that, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely, and I talked with A&F about this last week. That is something you could consider. With any impact fee ordinance, there are mechanisms that can be written into the ordinance that would allow you to, under certain circumstances, waive fees partially or entirely, but that is something that you would have written into there. Now, as you waive fees, keep in mind there's sort of two sides to a road impact fee ordinance. There's the cost for all the improvements, and then there's the fees that you're collecting from the developers. So anytime you would waive a fee, you're essentially then putting more fee into your column that you would have to pay for. Again, a minor adjustment on a one lot, someone building on 5 acres on the edge of town or less even. But that opportunity is there for you to waive fees in that circumstance, or any circumstance for that matter.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Eddie. Appreciate it. Okay, any other discussion from council?
Not for me.
Okay, we'll move on to claims then, and we'll entertain a motion concerning the claims.
I make a motion, we pay the claims.
Motion to pay
I'll
the
second.
claims in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any other announcements, discussion? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks for watching. Our next meeting will be the spoken about August 12th at 7:15 PM. Thanks for watching.